asking you, like, as a supporter, number one, this is the lowest Tip have been since in your lifetime?
Well, since the 2012 All Ireland semi final against Kilkenny, that was, Declan Ryan and Tommy Dunn was coach that day. That was really low. That was low as a snake's belly type stuff. Last 25 minutes, trying to watch through that was desperate, and it was fairly similar in this game here. And it's not like Cork are the best team in the country and have been winning loads of All Irelands coming into it. Everyone had dismissed Cork 2 weeks ago, and now Tipperary are getting battered out the gate in their home turf. I mean, if you want to say what were the positives, you'd say, yeah, there's a couple of lads there who, clearly have a bit of talent, and a couple of lads have gotten game time this year. But you came away from it just wondering, like, what has been achieved this year? Like, you couldn't not play those players anyway because certain lads had retired. So, as a matter of course, all of those guys were going to be playing anyway. So you had to ask yourself, what was achieved in terms of game plan this year? Do we now know what Tip are going to be doing next year? We've no idea. There is nothing obvious about the game plan. I don't know what Tipperary are actually trying to do. Like Colin Bonner said, we're in shock. Our hearts are just sunk here after the game. And, that kind of spoke for basically the county in general. Everyone was in shock at how bad it was. Like, you go through the collapses in games, right? Against Waterford, at the start of the second half, Waterford went on a run of 2-7 to 3 points. Against Clare, midway during the first half, Clare went a run of 3-6 to 3 points, including 2-3 in a row. Against Limerick, Limerick went on a run of 2-8 to 4 points in the last 17 minutes plus injury time. And then Cork went on two massive bursts here. During the first half, a run of 2-13 to 3 points. And in the second half, a run of 1-9 to 4. And then, of course, when I was saying this to you as we were preparing for the show, you mentioned the 16-point turnaround against Limerick last year. And the question is, I wonder, how can Tip go from a team that, fine, there was that huge turnaround against Limerick last year, but ultimately lost the game by 5 points and were very competitive for nice spells of it, either side of, that 16-point turnaround. So there's that running theme now of midway through games, there's a point where the other team will absolutely turn the screw. Tipperary won't be able to find a way to stem the bleeding. No one even going around with the old Nicky Quaid contact lens sort of spiel. And how can Tip look this unfit compared with last year? Because, I've no doubt but that the players are giving everything when they're out in the field the majority of the time. I'm sure there's an isolated incident or two where players' heads drop and they don't do the right thing because Cork were just running all over Tipperary in the last 45 minutes of the game. But there was times early in the game where I was like, Tipperary looked gassed here. And players that didn't look gassed last year in any of the championship games, like one or two of the older players, yeah, they looked like they were fading late on in games. But like 20 minutes into the game, there's lads who are still in their 20s, who were bent over in their haunches, who were, they were red in the face. And I'm like, is that what sort of quality of training is going on? What's the S&C? So, like, did you look at the Tipperary team and think, wow, athletically here, there's a fair difference between them and Cork here, even compared with last year alone? Like some of the same players compared to last year alone. And that suggests what happened over the winter.
Yeah, after about 20, 25 minutes, I thought they looked out on their feet, some of them. They were actually down on their hunkers. They were kind of keeling over almost, some of them, which is just, it's mad to think that. Definitely it's a part to do with condition, 100%. It's also part to do with your mindset, I think, and confidence levels been on the floor. Do you know when you're not playing? When you're not playing particularly well, you could have trained quite hard, but you're not playing particularly well. Then all of a sudden, you're kind of thinking, "Oh, geez, I don't know how fit I am here. I don't know if I have the work done." And then all of a sudden, everything just spirals, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And you could have a lot of decent training done, but you just probably don't have the confidence. Tip had. Their confidence was eroded after that penalty miss. The game just completely turned, as you say. Cork went in a scoring burst, and Tip just weren't able to keep up with them. They were chasing shadows thereafter, really, and Cork were playing around them. Tip weren't able to get any big hits in. They weren't able to put pressure on Cork. The pressure, you have to put pressure on Cork. You have to, I suppose, question their touch. You have to question whether they're able to do things under pressure. Tip weren't able to do that yesterday at all. And yeah, as I just thought in the last 15 or 20 minutes, it could have been an absolute massacre. That's not to say it wasn't a massacre in relative terms, because it was, but that could have been 17 or 18 points easily yesterday, easily. And in fairness, at least they were able to keep the scoreboard tipping over. It's not mad to think that you could score 124 and be absolutely annihilated in a championship game. And that's basically what happened yesterday. It's probably, as you said, it's probably a running team that we've seen in recent years. You can put up big scores, but the scores that have been conceded at the other end, like Laois are putting up some decent scores the last couple of years, even Westmeath as well, and still shipping quite big defeats. That's just the way hurling is gone now. And you cannot allow teams to run through you. Like I couldn't believe Dara Fitzgibbon was just allowed the freedom of the park for that goal. Absolutely bonkers. One person meets him at the 45 and he's to tip the ball over the bar. Nobody meets him. He must have just been like, I'm just going to stay going. Gets his strike off about 16, 17 metres out. Ronan Maher kind of dived across him. Looked like it went through his legs. Looked like Barry Hogan was maybe slightly on side. I think it went through his legs as well. But that's the exact same thing that happened with John Conlon for Clare as well. The whole field just opens up in front of him. And like that's just not good enough yet. Like you coach lads to you definitely always say meet the man that's coming. That's not to say you totally abandon your own man, but you meet the man that's coming. Make him pass you, or make him pass the ball, make him make another play to force a possible mistake. I just couldn't believe what I was looking at there yesterday. And even just Fitzgibbon's flick across for Tim O'Mahony's flick goal as well. Oh. Like that's an embarrassing goal to concede. But it is an embarrassing, like they're playing with you basically there. And that's what it was. And that's how much superior Cork were yesterday.
Yeah, look, we obviously have to emphasise how brilliant Cork were. To go to another, your long-time rivals' home turf and put up 330 is quite exceptional. And they're firmly back on track. What that means for later in the season, we'll talk about a little bit more.
Can I just say on that, Shane, as well, how Cork are the first team to lose their first 2 round robin games and get through. Like everything was against Cork, you would say. You would say the narrative around them, confidence on the floor. And they go to Walsh Park and produce a brilliant performance. They go to Semple Stadium. Like, maybe we're even doing them a disservice in a way. Like, what they've done, and to go and win 2 away games, and with the whole Ed Sheeran debacle as well. So many things were stacked against them from the league final onwards, and they've managed to turn things around phenomenally. And they're a dangerous beast going into the back door now.
Yeah, they really are. Like Conor Lahan, 7 points from play and another.
Who was on him? Who was like? Can I just add on that? Who was actually marking him? Like, I know they were rotating.
There were,
but
so
like,
you couldn't put it down to any one man. But like, this feeds into a point I wanted to make, in that Cork players several times either spilled the ball or were held up in a tackle by one person in a Tipperary jersey. So that obviously, like, if you're tackling someone, like you've been a defender throughout your life, if you tackle someone and stop him up or force him to turn, you're then expecting support to come in straight away, aren't you? Because you're like, this will be my reward for getting that tackle in. Someone will help me out. Or I knock the ball out of someone's hand, someone will be there to pick it up. Tipperary players were so disjointed, they were not hunted in packs. That's the whole thing. You have to hunt in packs in hurling and Gaelic football, and I suppose in all sports in a way. And it just did not happen. So whether that was like how disorganized they were, the lacking in fitness, the lacking in belief, lads not, giving absolutely everything, maybe in the odd occasion, I don't know. But Tipperary had no real idea of how to work as a unit. Like, even with the short puckouts that Cork worked out, the amount of times that someone would hit a ball across to the cornerback, he'd move it on a few yards, then move it across, and maybe somebody like Coleman would be shown for it in the middle. And the Tipperary inside forward, rather than working his way across to ensure that Coleman couldn't receive the ball, instead just stayed looking at it. The ball would go to Coleman then, and he could end up, doing whatever he liked with it. Some of those puckouts that Patrick Collins was able to put into the middle of the field, and the likes of, Dara Fitzgibbon ends up for his goal. I think it was just a straight puckout, and either someone handed it to him or he just turned and ran straight in. It was like puckouts picking out somebody who's 30 yards in space, almost in their half-forward line. It was beyond belief. So if you were to ask me, do I look at Tipperary and think, well, look, it's building towards something? It's building towards nothing. I mean, you know, like Colin Bonner said afterwards, like, you know, he's in shock and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, he's a gent of a man anytime I've spoken to him ever. But I'd imagine he's come away from this wondering, you know, do I fancy another year? Like, am I going in the right direction? And I'd say the management team is probably looking at it thinking, I'm not sure that, you know, that this is right for us. Like, do you look at it and think, like, I look at it and I think this isn't going anywhere. And we nearly have to say, you know, let's call a spade here. This isn't working. I know there are lots of reasons, retirements. Look, no one made more excuses for them than me because I didn't want to just be the person hammering. But, like, go through the year. Who have Tipperary beaten? Laois, and struggled to beat Laois in the league. Kilkenny, 2 terrible teams that day in Thurles in the league. And Antrim. So, other than that, lost to Kerry, lost to Dublin, Waterford again, Clare, Limerick, Cork. So, where's this going?
Yeah,
like evidence, you tell me. Like, answer that directly yourself. Like,
well, I'm confused as to what way Tipperary are trying to play. Whether there's any pattern to the play, whether they're caught between trying to do several different things but actually doing nothing at all in a way. I don't know. I'd probably question some of the coaching maybe that's going on, and you know, they don't look like the most well coached team on the pitch. That's just my own opinion looking at it. And as you know, really, when you put the results there, the results do not stand up. Like you don't, yeah, you know the way you don't see what's building. You know, if you see something building, you're thinking next year things could fall into place a bit more. Like, well, to be fair, I probably didn't see much building with Limerick in 2017, and look what happened there. But it looked like they were trying to play to some sort of a style or a pattern. I don't know what way Tipperary are playing. As I couldn't believe, like, when Conor Lehane got his 3rd point yesterday, you'd imagine someone just marks him. Someone just picks him up, and if you have to follow him everywhere he goes, then you follow him everywhere he goes. You can't just let him take 6 shots in the first half and score 6 points, and not really be under any pressure for those 6 shots. Really, they were basically 5 of them were absolute carbon copies of each other. Which was bizarre to look at, really. I don't know. I thought Colin Bonner looked a beaten man when we interviewed him in the dressing room yesterday. I thought he was fairly low after the Limerick game as well. And if you look at it, Tip produced a performance of such against Waterford. That form has worked out absolutely horribly. A no-show against Clare, a no-show against Cork yesterday, and they were very competitive against Limerick. A Limerick side that maybe it looks more like that the handbrake wasn't even off in that game. So I'm not sure how you stack it up, but I wouldn't be too surprised if there was a change in the off season, being honest. And that's probably they're not the only county we're going to talk about where that's a realistic possibility either.